Well, hey there, baseball fans. It's me, Thought Sports, and I'm here to talk to you about a baseball game. And I know that's the type of content you come to me for because of my natural athleticism. Ah, baseball. The sweet science. The crack of the bat. The roar of the crowd. It's a game that I definitely know all of the rules to. I want to talk about a very special game, one that took place on the 16th of August, 1933. It was between two local Toronto baseball clubs. Wait, keep watching. Harvard Playground and St. Peter's. This was a semi-final game. It was all on the line. It all came down to this. And St. Peter's won. Well, okay, there's more to the story, but you gotta let me give you some context first. You see, Harvard Playground was mostly made up of young Jewish and Italian men. St. Peter's was a Catholic team, sponsored by a Catholic church. Now this was 1933, keep in mind, and that was shortly after Adolf Hitler, maybe you've heard of him, took power in Germany. Anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant sentiment was on the rise all over the world and all over the city. So-called swastika gangs were terrorizing the Toronto Jewish community. Ostensibly, these groups claimed to have nothing to do with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, but their goal was to clear Toronto's beaches of undesirables. They meant Jews. You see, Jews were kept out of a lot of public spaces, so as a result, they tended to congregate at the beaches, especially in the summer of 1933, which was hot and humid as all hell. So guys draped in swastikas were showing up at Toronto beaches for the explicit purpose of removing Jews from public spaces. Keep in mind, this was 1933, and the meaning of the swastika was absolutely not lost on the Jewish community of Toronto. Also, for a group that claimed to have no connection to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, they sure seemed to like saying Heil Hitler a lot. They sure seemed to like saying that while harassing and intimidating Jews. That's the most Nazi shit I've ever heard, and it just goes to show that Nazis have been claiming not to be Nazis for 85 years. And we're still falling for it. The game took place at Willowvale Park, now known as Christie Pits, which at the time was a majority English upper middle class area. Now this is during the Great Depression, so a lot of people were out of money and out of work, and they weren't happy about it, so you can imagine they weren't thrilled when a bunch of working class Jews started moving to their neighborhood. You can kind of imagine that that might make an easy scapegoat for your economic problems. I smudged my makeup. I'm gonna take it off because it's annoying. In the previous game in the series, a bunch of hooligans up to no good showed up. They started yelling racial epithets and like Heil Hitler and like had a little sweater with a swastika on it. Hey, Nazis, by the way, I know your whole thing is trying to be intimidating, so a little piece of advice from the world's least intimidating man, maybe invest in a flag? Cause like, sweaters, that's not gonna cut it. That's a pretty adorable way to demonstrate hate. Sweaters are not exactly the most intimidating article of clothing one can wear. Just, you know, keep that in mind. And I know it's tough. You guys can't seem to draw them right most of the time, but just get a flag. They also drew a giant swastika on the roof of Harvard Playground's clubhouse. Again, seems like this could be better accomplished with a flag. Suffice to say, tensions were running high. Everybody knew shit was gonna go down. Everybody was mad, and everybody was looking for an excuse to get punchy about it. The police knew about it too, but they, weirdly, elected not to show up and help the Jewish-Italian team. I will give you a moment to recover from your shock. The Toronto Star reported with just incredible comic timing. Chief Draper had, owing to the rumors of the trouble that was brewing, been requested by letter to provide additional police protection for the occasion. The extra protection was not provided. So it came as no surprise to anyone that after the August 16th game, a group of no-goodniks known as the Pit Gang showed up and unfurled a big sheet with a swastika drawn on it. And I guess it's about as close as we're gonna get to a flag, so Good job, I guess. Now I want you to put yourself in the shoes of Harvard Playground in that situation. What do you do? People like you are being rounded up and discriminated against all over the world. People in your city are organizing to frighten you, to remind you that nowhere you go is safe. Imagine how scary that must be. A group of people showing up in public, in daylight, and announcing their intention to murder you, eventually. And the police and other institutions that you thought would keep you safe, they knew, but they weren't going to help. They were going to sit on their hands and let the bad guys come for you. What would you do? I can tell you for a fact what I would do. There's not a doubt in my mind that I would cry like a little baby and get in the fetal position and shit my pants. Lucky for me, there's no crying in baseball. Harvard Playground didn't cry. They didn't run away. They did the only reasonable thing someone can do in that situation. They took the only adult, responsible course of action to that situation. They stormed the mound and beat the ever-loving shit out of the pit gang. Just smashed their little Nazi faces until they cried for their little Nazi mothers. You see, they weren't caught unaware. Local youth groups, predominantly Jewish, knew about the situation, knew something had to be done. So they organized and showed up at the game, made their presence known. They brought weapons, including baseball bats, lead pipes, and their mitts. That's not baseball mitts. They're punching mitts. When they saw Nazis threatening their compatriots, they said no. They stood their ground and fought back. And they weren't alone either. The Italian community took up arms with their Jewish brethren. To be clear, there were Italians on both sides of the conflict, but there was a very defined Italian presence fighting on behalf of Toronto's Jewish community. They understood that if you let Nazis come for vulnerable people first, they'll come for you next. They helped nip it in the bud. And the fighting went on for 6 hours. Hundreds of people got in on the action. Reinforcements arrived by the truckload on both sides. By the end of the night, a crowd of over 10,000 people had gathered, mostly just looky-loos gawking at the action. The fighting went on from 7:30 p.m. to 2 in the morning, when finally the sluggish police response was able to disperse the crowd with a combination of heroic billy clubbing and choking people with motorcycle exhaust. 2 people were arrested and 1 person was charged and ultimately had to pay a fine of $50 for brandishing a knife at a murder rally that he threw with his Nazi friends. Nobody was killed in the riot, but there were plenty of injuries on both sides. Ribs were bruised, skulls were cracked, and by the end of the night, Toronto had learned a very important lesson. That fascists don't own these streets, and if they try to take them ever again, there's going to be trouble. After the riot put pressure on the situation, Mayor William Stewart, who was already pretty fucking sick of Nazi bullshit, announced that people openly displaying swastikas would be liable for prosecution. See, that's what people like about sports stories. Sometimes the little guy wins. Doesn't matter if you have the best training, you're the biggest and toughest. Sometimes the game just goes to whoever wants it more. And people will always want to live their lives peacefully more than you'll want to get rid of them. This was 85 years ago, and in the intervening period, we've seen what the horrors of fascism and anti-Semitism can do if they're left to flourish. And to humanity's great shame, we're seeing a massive global upswing in fascist activity. Just like back then, they're hiding behind a paper-thin cloak of plausible deniability, but everybody sees them, everybody knows what's going on, and it just feels inevitable that we're gearing up for a repeat of some of the worst events in human history. When we look back at the way that this happened before, we see the same patterns emerging. We see people behaving the same way, and it just feels like there's nothing we can do to stop it. What can be harder to see is all of the times that horrible things were avoided. That doesn't make the history books because, I mean, how would it? All of the stories we tell ourselves about how hopeless the situation is, they're wrong. The Pit Gang gathered an enormous crowd of people during a time when anti-Semitic populism was on the rise. They lost. The police, the government, all the institutions that were meant to keep Harvard Playground safe didn't. Harvard Playground still won. You see, that feeling of dread, that feeling of hopelessness, that's very useful for fascists. They want you to feel that way because if you do, you might be too afraid to push back. And it feels like they're gaining ground all the time because all of their victories are publicized. It's news when a fascist accomplishes something. It's scary. It generates a lot of clicks. Their myriad failures don't tend to make the news because we expect fascists to fail. That's what they do. They're losers. They lose everything. It doesn't surprise people when they lose. It might get reported on, but it doesn't stick in your memory because you kind of expect that, don't you? And let me let you in on a little secret. It's actually not even hard to beat them. Not yet. There are way less of them than there are of everyone else. And ultimately, they can beat me pretty easily. I'm extremely beatable. Maybe they can beat you. I don't know you. It's possible. But they can't beat us. Not all of us. And they know that, and it scares them. The only way that they stand a chance is if we let them stand a chance. The moment we stand up and we say no. No. Enough is enough. They're fucked. And they know it. And they're terrified of it. Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you come by Christie Pits on Sunday, August 19th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., where there's going to be a community barbecue to commemorate the 85th anniversary of the Christie Pits Riot. There'll be food and music and activities for the kids. Bring the whole family. It's going to be a great time. It's a good opportunity to meet other people like you who might be interested in agitating and defending our community. And if nothing else, it's a great way to remind all those fascists that, hey, we're still here. We're ready for you. I want to kiss all my patrons in the mouth. We got Pregnant Seinfeld, Mike Yocom, Ree Carter, Illusia S, Matthew, Ryan William Cox, Nina Lego, Spider Facts, Live Static, Kat Arthur, Matt Freeze, Brett Dibble, Nestor Ivanovich, Jacob A. Berkowitz, Julian Colin, Neil Zabildgard, Ian Thompson, Some Random Leftist, Michael Hollenbach, Matt Brighton, Mia Nakano, Leo, Jane, Nicole Vianarkaduck, Thorn Melker, Chorham, Patrick M, Lawson, Samael, James Taylor, Aaron B, Dash of Week, Jordan Hoxie, Queen Maxine, Colbean Mani, Chuds McKenzie, Morgan Clark, Shaban O'Leary, and Jan Anders Bremer. If you'd like to give me money and hear your name read out incorrectly, you can do that at patreon.com/thoughtslime. You might have noticed that this video looks either substantially better or substantially worse. That's because I got some new equipment, and that's all thanks to you Patreon dingalings, so thanks for that, suckers. Hey, like the video and subscribe or I'm coming for you with this foam baseball bat that I got at the dollar store for $2.50 and it doesn't even hurt. I'm gonna get taken off YouTube for threatening people. That was a joke. YouTube content moderation team. Everything I say in my videos is a joke. I'm a performance artist.